Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Hello students, I am Dr. Rinki Menon. Today I would be delivering a lecture in the subject of organizational communication. The course objective. The course aims to make students understand the basic concepts of business communication and develop conceptual clarity and logical skills so that they can use them. The course content. The course comprises of various concepts of communication. Now let us begin with today's module that we shall cover. After today's lecture, you shall be able to understand about the importance and purpose of communication in an organization. You shall understand importance of communication in management. We shall take a look at the dimensions of communication in an organization and understand some important functions of managing channels of communication in an organization. We shall also take an insight into the functions of organizational communication. So, communication is the passing of information and understanding from one person to another person at the same level or at different levels. It is the process by which the management reaches others in managing its work. Since managers work through others, all of their managerial functions pass through the bottleneck of communication. One person can initiate the process, but he alone cannot complete it. It is completed only when it is received by others. The effectiveness of management largely depends upon the effectiveness of communication. It is communication which gives life to the organization. So, it can be said to be the lifeblood of an organization. The communication system serves as the vehicle by which an organization is embedded in its environment. It not only integrates the various subunits of an organization but also in a systematic sense serves as an elaborate set of interconnected channels designed to shift and analyze information important from the environment. It also exports processed information to the environment. The roles of communication become more critical as the organization grows in its size, complexity and sophistication. So, the system should be adjusted according to the needs of the organization from time to time. Communication is the nervous system of an organization. It keeps the members of the organization informed about the internal and external happenings relevant to a task and of interest to the organization. It coordinates the efforts of the members towards achieving organizational objectives. It is a process of influencing the action of a person or a group. It is a process of meaningful interaction among human beings to initiate, execute, accomplish or even prevent certain actions. Communication is thus the lifeblood of an organization. Without communication, an organization is lifeless and its very existence in danger. Importance and purpose of communication. Just as communication is vital for our existence in civilized society, so also it is essential for functioning of organizations. So, without communication, there would be no organization. Needless to say, communication is the ingredient that makes organization possible. It is the vehicle through which the basic management functions are carried out. Managers direct through communication. They coordinate through communication. They staff, plan and control through communication. Virtually all actions takes place in an organization are preceded by communication. For instruction, the instructive function unvarying and importantly deals with commanding nature. It is more or less of directive nature. Under this, the communicator transmits with necessary directives and guidance to the next level. so as to enable them to accomplish his particular task. In this, instructions basically flow from top to the lower levels. For integration, it is consolidated function under which integration of activities is endeavored. In integration, function of communication mainly involves to bring about interrelationship among the various functions of the business organization. It helps in the unification of different management functions. For information, the purpose or function of communication in an organization is to inform the individual or group about a particular task or company policies and procedures, etc. Top management informs policies to the lower level through middle level. In turn, the lower level informs the top level the reaction through the middle level. Information can flow vertically, horizontally or diagonally across the organization. Becoming informed or inform others is the main purpose of communication. For evaluation, examination of activities to form an idea or judgment of the worth of task is achieved through communication. Communication is a tool to appraise the individual or team, their contribution to the organization. Evaluating one's own inputs or others' inputs or some ideological scheme demands an adequate and effective communication process. For direction, communication is necessary to issue directions by the top manager or management to the lower levels. Employees can perform better when he is directed by the senior. Directing others may be communicated orally or in written. An order may be common order, request order or implied order. For teaching, the importance of personal safety on the job has been greatly recognized. A complete communication process is required to teach and educate workers about personal safety on the jobs. This communication helps the workers to avert accidents, risk, etc. and to avoid cost, procedures, etc. For influencing, a complete communication process is necessary in influencing others or being influenced. The individual having potential to influence others can easily persuade others. It implies the provision of feedback which tells the effect of communication. For image building, a business enterprise cannot isolate from the rest of the society. There is interrelationship and interdependence between the society and the enterprise operating in the society. Goodwill and confidence are necessarily created among the public. It can be done by communication with the different media which has to project the image of the firm in a society. Through an effective external communication system, an enterprise has to inform the society about its goals, activities, progress and social responsibility. For employees' orientation, when a new employee enters into the organization, at that time he or she will be unknown to the organization's program, policies, culture, etc. Communication helps to make people acquainted with the co-employees, superiors and with the policies, objectives, rules and regulations of the organization. Now, let us take a look at the importance of communication in management. Communication skills constitute an important aspect of effective management. Managing is a complex process. In simple terms, it can be described as the organization of capital, labor and material to achieve production and distribution of particular goods or services. First, the management fixes its objectives, what to do and from its policies on how to do it. Then there has to be a system through which the production and distribution process can be guided, coordinated and controlled to ensure that the management operations are led and coordinated and the results are feedback. Managing is a unified, organized and cooperative system committed to achievement of common goals. The sense of unity of purpose and commitment to a single organizational goal can be developed only through the inspiring and persuasive power of communication. To be able to do so, A manager needs to have communication skills of high order to structure the information according to its negative or affirmative nature and to use words and tones according to the purpose of communication. The manager should be able to create a desired relationship with the audience or workers to produce the needed response. For training and development programs, communication also plays a vital role. For appraising employees, performance standards also require to be properly and clearly communicated so that employee understand what he needs to do, and subsequently employees also need feedback about their performance. In case the HR manager fails to properly communicate the performance outcomes, results, it will cause emotional problems, dissatisfaction and low morale among the employees. Communication is also essential for explaining disciplinary rules and procedures and their proper implementation. A human resource manager needs to give good negotiation skills to arrive at an agreement during the collective bargaining process, overcome obstacles which may arise in the negotiation process. It is also required for fostering effective participative and collaborative work culture in the organization. Problems, suggestions, opinions and recommendations of an employees are transmitted through communication in an organization. Communication has a direct link with motivation, morale, absenteeism and productivity of the employees. A leader's failure or success depends upon how well he communicates his plans, vision and ideas to his followers. Thus, a whole lot of strategies, verbal, of effective communication form an important part of management as a discipline. Now, let us take a look at the dimensions of communication. In an organization, communication flows in 5 main directions: downward, upward, horizontal or lateral, diagonal or the grapevine communication. Downward communication. Communication that flows from a higher level in the organization to the lower levels is a downward communication. In other words, communication flows from the superiors to the subordinate in a chain of command is a downward communication. This communication flow is used by the managers to transmit work-related information to the employees at the lower levels. Employees require this information for performing their jobs and for meeting the expectation of their managers. Downward communication is used by the managers for the following purposes: providing feedback on employees' performance, giving job instructions, providing a complete understanding of the employee's job as well as to communicate them how their job is related to other jobs in the organization, communicating the organization's mission and vision to the employees, highlighting the areas of attention. Organizational publications, circulars, letter to the employees, group meetings, etc. are all examples of downward communication. In order to have effective and error-free downward communication, a manager must specify communication objectives, ensure that the message is accurate, specific and unambiguous, utilize the best communication technique to convey the message to the receiver in the right form. The next is upward flow of communication. Communication that flows to the higher levels in the organization is called upward communication. It provides feedback on how well the organization is functioning. The subordinates use upward communication to convey their problems and performances to the superiors. The subordinates also use the upward communication to tell how well they have understood the downward communication. It can also be used by the employees to share their views, ideas and to participate in the decision-making process. Upward communication leads to a more committed and loyal workforce in an organization because the employees are given a chance to raise and speak dissatisfaction issues to the higher levels. The managers get to know about the employees' feelings towards their jobs, peers or colleagues, superiors and organization in general. Managers can thus accordingly take actions for improving things. Grievance redressal system, complaint and suggestion box, job satisfaction surveys, etc. all help in improving the upward communication. Other examples of upward communication are performance reports made by the low level management for reviewing by the higher level management, employee attitude surveys, letters from employees, employees manager discussions, etc. Next is lateral or horizontal communication. Communication that takes place at the same level of hierarchy in an organization is lateral communication, that is, communication between the peers, colleagues, between managers at same level or between any horizontally equivalent organizational member. The advantages of horizontal communication are as follows. It is time saving. It facilitates coordination of the task. It facilitates cooperation among the team members. It provides emotional and social assistance to the organizational members. It helps in solving various organizational problems. It is a means of information sharing. It can also be used for resolving conflicts of department with other departments or conflicts within a department. Diagonal communication or crosswise communication. Communication that takes place between a manager and employees of other work groups is a diagonal communication. It generally does not appear on organizational chart. For instance, to design a training module or a training manager interacts with an operations personnel to inquire about the way they perform their task. The accounts people of an organization visiting different employees in various departments for their IT calculation, bonus for workers, etc. fall under diagonal communication. Some important functions of managing. The functions of managing, which include planning, organizing, instructing, coordinating and controlling, requires the support or action of communication. Forecasting and planning. For each function depends on effective communication for its success. For example, if the management fails to communicate its objectives, policies, programs, procedures and budgetary provisions to the concerned people at the proper time, an organization will fail to run in an organized and targeted manner. Organizing. Organizing as a management function determines the formal and informal relationships within the organization and outside it. These relationships are developed and maintained through interpersonal communication. Instructing. The function of instructing wholly depends upon interpersonal exchange of information regarding products, processes and targets for its success. Coordinating. Coordinating as a manager's function is perhaps the most demanding of all functions. It requires excellent communication skills to ensure that all efforts are directed towards the achievement of a single organizational goal. To see that the diverse activities are unified into single whole, the manager should be able to relate with all the people formally and socially. Controlling. Finally, for controlling, the manager should have competence to receive information and respond quickly. Hence, an active communication system is vital for the good health of an organization. If there is a continuous sharing of ideas and interactive meetings between the management and workers, the overall atmosphere of an understanding and goodwill would prevail in the workplace. If decision making is transparent, employees would understand reasons for those decisions and accept and implement them even if they affect them adversely. Channels of communication. A breakdown in the communication channel leads to an ineffective flow of information. Employees are unaware of what the common company expects of them. They are uninformed of what is going on in the company. This will cause them to become suspicious of motives and any change in the company. Also, Without effective communication, employees become department-minded rather than company-minded, and this affects their decision making and productivity in the workplace. Eventually, this harms the overall organizational objectives as well. Hence, in order for an organization to be run effectively, a good manager should be able to communicate to his or her employees what is expected of them, make sure they are fully aware of company's policies and any upcoming changes. Therefore, an effective communication channel should be implemented by managers to optimize worker productivity to ensure the smooth running of an organization. Formal channels of communication. The messages which are circulated on regulated, preset channels of an organization are creating the formal communication. The content of the communication is related to the organization's activity, to the work and to anything which is related to those. The formal communication can be consistent in verbal messages, non-verbal messages, written, under the shape of letters, telephone messages, radio messages, printed, internal notes, etc. Even some gestures can consist in informal communication. The messages are transmitted by the authorized ones on official channels. These arrive to the ones who need to react to people or machines which need to know the content of these messages. Usually, all formal communications are recorded and kept in the organization's evidence. They are retained copies of these by the transmitter, by the receiver, by all of the desks from the organization which need to know and keep the information. Examples of formal communications are given by work commands, reports and financial evidences, reports over sales or inventory, statements referring to the company's policies, post descriptions, etc. The formal communication network is formed out of formal channels created by setting a formal system of responsibilities according to the hierarchical structure of the organization. The perfect network is the one which contains communication channel from bottom up, downward and horizontally. Often, the direction of horizontal communication is missing or is inefficient, and in this way, the accuracy of the information decreases. The situation is appearing because of the lack of permanent circulation of the information between departments, although this is a vital for the organization in conditions of existent competition or the lack of specialists in the organizational communication. The number of communication channels available to a manager has increased over the last odd 20 years. Video conferencing, mobile technology, electronic bulletins, boards and fax machines are some of the new possibilities. As organizations grow in size, managers cannot rely on face-to-face communication alone to get their messages across. A challenge the manager face today is to determine what type of communication channel should they opt for in order to carry out effective communication. In order to make a manager's task easier, the types of communication channels are grouped into three main groups: formal, informal and unofficial. A formal communication channel transmits information such as goals, policies and procedures of the organization. Messages in this type of communication channel flow a chain of command. This means information flows from a manager to his subordinates and they in turn pass on the information to the next level of staff. An example of formal communication channel is a company's newsletter, which give employees as well as the clients a clear idea of a company's goals and visions. It also includes the transfer of information with regard to memoranda, reports, directions and scheduled meetings in a chain of command. A business plan, customer satisfaction survey, annual reports, employer's manual, review meetings are all formal communication channels. Informal channel of communication. Informal communication arises out of all those channels that fall outside the formal channels, and it is also known as a grapevine. It is established around the societal affiliation of members of the organization. Informal communication does not allow authority lines as in the case of formal communication. Informal communication takes place due to the individual needs of the members of the organization and subsist in every organization. Normally, such communication is oral and may be expressed even by simple glance, sign or silence. Informal communication is implicit, spontaneous, multidimensional and diverse. It often works in a group of people. That is, when one person has some information of interest, he passes it on to his informal group and so on. An organization can make effective, efficient use of informal channels of fortify the formal channels of communication. It acts as a valuable purpose in expressing certain information that cannot be channeled via the official channels. It satisfies the people's desire to identify what is happening in the organization and offers opportunity to express dreads, worries and complaints. Informal communication also facilitates to ameliorate the managerial decisions as more people are involved in the process of decision making. In spite of many advantages, informal communication has certain disadvantages. Informal communication contains facts, deceptions, rumors and unclear data. The informal channel of communication may transmit completely imprecise information that may harm rather than help the organization. In addition, it is impossible to fix the responsibility for its origin or flow of information. However, for the efficient working of an organization, both informal and formal communication channels are required. An example of an informal communication channel is lunchtime at the organization's cafeteria or canteen. Here, in a relaxed atmosphere, discussions among employees are encouraged. Also, managers walking around adopting an hands-on approach to handling employees' queries is an example of an informal communication channel. Quality circles, teamwork, different training programs are outside of the chain of command and so fall under the category of informal communication channels. Grapevine communication or the informal communication. Grapevine is an informal channel of business communication. It is also called so because it stretches throughout the organization in all directions irrespective of the authority levels. Man, as we know, is a social animal. Despite existence of formal channels in an organization, the informal channels tend to develop when he interacts with other people in the organization. It exists more at the lower levels of organization. Grapevine generally develops due to various reasons. One of them is that when an organization is facing recession, the employee sense uncertainty. Also, at times, employees do not have self-confidence due to which they inform or form unions. Sometimes the managers show preferential treatment and favor some employees, giving a segregated feeling to the other employees. Thus, when employees sense a need, they exchange their views. They go for grapevine network as they cannot use the formal channels of communication in that case. Generally, during breaks in cafeterias, the subordinates talk about their superiors' attitude and behavior and exchange their views with their peers. They discuss rumors about promotion and transfer of other employees. Thus, grapevine spreads like fire and it is not easy to trace the cause of such communication at times. The examples of grapevine network of communication. Suppose the profit amount of a company is known. Rumor is spread that this much profit is there and on that basis bonus is declared. CEO may be in relation to the production manager. They may have friendly relations with each other. Now, let us take a look at the advantages of grapevine communication. Grapevine channel carry information rapidly. As soon as an employee gets to know some confidential information, he becomes inquisitive and passes the details then to his closest friend, who in turn passes it to the other. Thus, it spreads hastily or fast. The managers get to know the reactions of their subordinates on their policies. Thus, the feedback obtained is quick and compared to formal channel of communication. The grapevine creates a sense of unity among the employees who share and discuss their views with each other. Thus, grapevine helps in developing group cohesiveness. The grapevine serves as an emotional supportive value. The grapevine is a supplement in those cases where formal communication does not work. As a coin has two sides, now let us take a look at the disadvantages of grapevine communication. The grapevine carries partial information at times as it is more based on rumors. Thus, it does not clearly depict the complete state of affairs. The grapevine is not trustworthy always as it does not follow official path of communication and is spread more by gossips and unconfirmed reports. The productivity of an employee may be hampered as they spend more time talking rather than working. The grapevine leads to making hostility against the executives. The grapevine may hamper the goodwill of the organization and it may carry false negative information about the high level people of the organization. A smart manager should take care of all the disadvantages of the grapevine and try to minimize them as possible. At the same time, he should make best possible use of advantages of grapevine. Functions of organizational communication. The most basic function of communication in an organization are to inform, control, motivate and emotional expression. Information. An organization needs a vast amount of information to function and operate a business. The top management would require timely and accurate information for the various departments to make effective decisions. Information is dispersed throughout an organization through written or verbal communication. A human resource representative or business owner may send out a memo explaining a change in the company's health plan. A business meeting may be used as a way of communication, a new office procedure. A webinar allows a company to conduct a meeting over the internet with employees or customers who cannot attend in person. The idea of informing within an organization is to provide data and information so that employees can effectively complete their job. Information ensures that an employee is aware of the rules and procedures of the organization. It also eliminates job uncertainty for workers when they are fully informed. Control. The management of an organization will always have plans with long, medium or long-term objectives for the months and years ahead. To achieve these objectives, the daily and monthly activities must proceed as planned in order to achieve the objective for the period. Communication acts to control members' behavior in several ways. Organizations have authorities, hierarchies and formal guidelines that employees are required to follow. When employees, for instance, are required to first communicate any job-related grievance to their immediate boss, to follow their job description or to comply with company policies, communication is performing a control function. But informal communication also controls behavior. When work groups tease or harass a member who produces too much or makes the rest of the group look bad, they are informally communicating with and controlling the members' behavior. A company uses communication as a way to maintain control over employees and their work environment. Written human resource policies and procedures dictate how employees are permitted to act in the workplace. Job descriptions outline the parameters of an employee's job function. Performance reviews control whether an employee receives a raise or attains a promotion. Motivation. Managers use communication to motivate workers to achieve peak performances. By clarifying the expectations of employees and providing incentives for meetings or exceeding expectations, communication can help companies reach specific objectives. For example, by communicating to salespeople that they'll receive a 10% bonus if they reach their annual sales goal. It helps the company reach its overall sales goals. Communication fosters motivation by clarifying to the employees what is to be done, how well they are doing, and what can be done to improve performance if it is subpar. The formation of specific goals, feedback on progress towards the goals, and reinforcement of desired behavior all stimulate motivation and require communication. Emotional expression and interdependence. Emotional appeal is when emotions or arguments are used to persuade others instead of facts or logic. Organizations can use emotional appeals when delivering bad news. Last year, the CEO spoke to the entire company at an emergency meeting. He explained how devastated he was over the need to have a corporate downsizing. He used emotions to explain that it was better for the overall security of the company to eliminate some position. For many employees, their work group is a primary source of social interaction. The communication that takes place within the group is a fundamental mechanism by which members show their frustration and feelings of satisfaction. Communication therefore provides release for the emotional expression of feelings and fulfillment of social needs. So, coming to the end of the discussion, today we studied about organization communication and skills that are needed for business communication. We started with the importance and purpose of communication in an organization. Then we moved to the dimensions, functions, and channel of communication in management. Lastly, we discussed about the functions of organization communication.